What would you do if the person you trusted most turned out to be your greatest threat? In a world ruled by innovation and influence, one quiet voice, a 9-year-old girl, uncovers a conspiracy buried beneath layers of power, deception, and silence. As the truth unfolds, a tech CEO must choose between revenge and redemption, between corporate survival and human connection. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about the courage to speak up, even when you're small. Stay with us, because what begins as suspicion will erupt into something far more powerful. Now, let's go back to where it all began. Carter William froze. Her whisper, soft, precise, cut through the calm like a scalpel. "I have a camera in my office," Maya said, "but it's not yours." His fingers hovered above the keyboard, the rhythmic clacking of keys falling silent. Behind him, the afternoon sun spilled across the polished walnut shelves, glinting off his glass desk and casting long shadows. The golden light illuminated the room, but no warmth reached the space between them now. Not after what she'd just said. He turned slowly, as though the air had grown thick around him. Maya stood near the doorway, half in shadow, her tiny fingers gripping the edge of the mahogany table like it was the only thing keeping her anchored. "Maya." His voice was too careful, each syllable weighted. The 9-year-old girl looked up at him, eyes wide and unreadable. She stepped forward, her sneakers whispering across the plush carpet, then she leaned close enough for him to feel her breath near his ear. "It's behind the picture," she said quietly. "The one Miss Vanessa gave you." His heart skipped. For 6 months since the car accident that took her brother and her in-laws, Maya had barely spoken. She drifted through the house like a ghost, watching, listening, always on the edges. Carter had tried everything: elite schools, private therapists, a bedroom filled with soft lights and books, but nothing cracked the wall she'd built. Until now. "You mean cameras?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She nodded toward the abstract painting above his bookshelf, a sleek, understated canvas Vanessa had brought in weeks ago, saying his office needed a little softness. Carter remembered the moment vividly, her laughter, her teasing, the kiss she pressed just beneath that very frame. "I saw a flash at night," Maya said. "It didn't match any of your devices. I checked." "You checked it?" "I used a tablet. I scanned the network when I couldn't sleep." Carter leaned back in his chair. This small, silent girl had uncovered something his highly paid security team had missed. She wasn't even supposed to be in his office. "How long have you been watching?" "Since last week." Her voice remained even, but her eyes searched his face for doubt. "Vanessa had installed that painting a month ago, said it was a gift to celebrate his new consulting contract with Homeland Security. She brought salmon poached in white wine, kissed him under that same painting, and whispered that she was proud. Now that moment felt like a trap. Carter stood slowly and walked to the wall. He lifted the painting off its hook, smoothly at first, then with a tug. Behind it, embedded in the plaster, was a black dot no bigger than a pencil eraser. "Maya, wait outside for a minute," he said gently. "No." Her tone was steady, not defiant but unshakably firm. She wasn't being rude. She was being brave. He paused. Something in her voice told him she wasn't finished. So he nodded and motioned her toward a guest chair. She sat with perfect stillness, arms resting in her lap, her expression unreadable, but far too old for her years. "I checked the signal logs," she said. "It started transmitting after she brought the painting, but now there are more, smaller frames, in the living room, in the kitchen." Carter's blood ran cold. He stared at the empty space on the wall, then back to the girl, who just blew apart his sense of safety. The past few weeks played like a montage in his mind. Vanessa's growing curiosity about his schedule, her sudden habit of straightening his desk, her perfectly timed coffee deliveries. He'd once chalked it up to her being thoughtful. Now it felt surgical. "You've known all this time?" Maya nodded once. "I didn't want to make it worse." Her words cut deeper than she knew. He knelt down in front of her. "You shouldn't have had to carry this alone." "You didn't believe me," she said. It wasn't angry, just honest, and true. He swallowed the shame and nodded. "But I do now. I believe you." Her shoulders softened ever so slightly, and for the first time in months, a trace of relief flickered across her face. Carter returned to the painting, examining the way the lens was embedded inside the curve of the frame. It was subtle, designed not just to blend in but to be invisible. Deliberate, calculated. Vanessa didn't just hang a picture, he murmured. She planted surveillance. And if she planted one, how many more? "Maya," he said, locking eyes with her, "I need you to keep monitoring. But only if you feel safe. Can you do that?" She nodded. He placed a steady hand on her small shoulder. "From now on we do this together." For the first time since she arrived, Maya smiled, not the polite kind, but a real one. The kind that said she felt seen, heard, believed. Carter, now fully awake in every sense of the word, turned back to his desk and opened a new secure terminal. Vanessa would be home soon, but this time he would be the one watching. And he wasn't going to blink. Outside, the wind shifted direction, rustling the tall trees around his estate like sentinels stirring. Inside, the air had changed, thicker with resolve, colder with realization. Vanessa would walk through the door in 27 minutes. He knew because she always left her firm at 5:35, stopped at the cafe 2 blocks away for a soy decaf latte, and pulled into the driveway at precisely 6:12. She would smile. She would hang her coat on the hook she insisted be placed near the door. She would lean in and say, "I missed you," and kiss him with that familiar hint of lavender and quiet control. But today would be different. The illusion had shattered. The frame had cracked. And Carter William, once a man buried in polite compliance, had woken up to a betrayal he could no longer ignore. And this story, his story and Maya's, had only just begun. The camera lens stared back at him, silent, unblinking, and yet somehow heavy with guilt. Maya sat perched at the edge of a chair, her legs curled beneath her like a cat, fingers dancing across the glowing tablet in her lap. The signals she sent weren't random, they were precise, coded, and alarming. 5 anomalies, she said softly. "They don't belong here." Carter didn't look up. "Where?" 2 in the office, 1 in the living room, 1 in the guest room, she hesitated. 1 in the master bedroom. A slow breath escaped him. Not anger, not yet. Anger was a luxury he couldn't afford right now. What he needed was clarity, and the girl sitting across from him had already given him that. "You've tracked them all?" "I mapped their digital behavior," Maya replied, her voice clinical beyond her years. "They stay mostly silent during the day, but between midnight and 4 a.m. they activate. Quietly. Someone is harvesting data in timed batches." Carter's jaw clenched. That wasn't amateur behavior. This wasn't some curious journalist or a jealous ex. This was deliberate, sophisticated. A kind of surveillance that his own cybersecurity company was built to prevent, and it had taken root in his own home. He stood and walked toward the oak cabinet mounted high on the wall. One swipe of his fingerprint, one fluid gesture across the biometric pad, and the sliding panel gave way to a matte black server tower humming gently in its wooden cradle. He reached for a secondary cable and handed it to Maya. "You're in," he said. Maya blinked. "You're giving me access?" "I trust you," Carter replied with a small nod. "More than I trust my own damn firewall." She didn't smile. She simply nodded, then got to work. As she dove into the code, tracing encrypted threads through layers of artificial noise, Carter turned back to his master security dashboard. Every camera, every mic, every log since installation, the house revealed itself like a nervous system under X-ray. Vanessa's access had been limited, intentionally so, but something in the logs didn't add up. Motion triggers in restricted rooms. The guest bedroom open on a Wednesday, the living room activated at 3 a.m. on Sunday. One log was especially disturbing. No source, no signature, a ghost. Whoever had orchestrated this wasn't just spying, they were erasing their fingerprints. A knock shattered the silence. Josephine. Carter opened the door to the family's long-time housekeeper. Her silver bun was impeccable, her blouse crisp, but her eyes narrowed the moment they met his. "What happened?" she asked plainly. He didn't deny it. "We've been watched." She stepped inside without hesitation. Maya barely looked up, absorbed in the glow of her screen. Josephine glanced at her, then back to Carter. He lowered his voice. "We think Vanessa installed surveillance devices. Maya found them." Josephine's lips tightened. "I knew it. She always lingered too long, always knew too much, and I've seen her whispering with Miles far too often." Carter froze. "Miles?" he echoed. Josephine nodded. "He came by twice last week when you were out. Said it was paperwork, but I heard them, her and Vanessa, in your office." She didn't know I was listening. Carter's stomach dropped. Miles Renese, his closest confidant since MIT. Was it possible? "Thank you," he whispered. "I need you to keep calm when she arrives." Josephine raised an eyebrow. "I've been polite longer than she's been alive. I can pretend." Just then, Maya's voice cut through the air. "I found something." Carter and Josephine turned at once. The girl pointed to a digital map, a blinking red dot hovering over a nondescript address downtown. "Device's route to that location," she explained. "Not here. Some kind of private hosting service. Very clean. No public ties." "They're not transmitting continuously," she added. "They're breaking up the data, hiding it in packets. It's subtle, but traceable." Carter nodded. "And you traced it?" "I've been watching you for weeks," she said matter-of-factly. "I learned." Before he could respond, the front door creaked open. Footsteps, laughter, familiar, measured. Carter silently shut the server console and locked Maya's tablet in the drawer. Josephine straightened her skirt, nodded to Maya, and exited without another word, her expression now completely neutral. "Carter?" Vanessa called sweetly. "Where are you, baby?" "In the office," he answered, stepping toward the door just as she entered, arms full of takeout and a bottle of wine peeking from the bag. "There's my genius," she smiled, kissing his cheek. He let her. She looked around the room and smirked. "Smells like server heat. Working overtime?" "Just diagnostics," he said casually. "Couple system bugs." "Anything serious?" "Not really. Might reset everything later." "Want help?" He smiled. "You've helped enough." She laughed. "Well, that sounds ominous." Harry didn't reply. She set the bags down and stretched, like she owned the space, casual, effortless. But he watched her fingers drag along the edge of his desk, hovering just above the drawer where the truth now lay hidden. "Let's eat before it gets cold," she said cheerfully, turning away. "I'll be out in a bit," he replied. She blew a kiss behind her and hummed down the hallway, unaware, or maybe pretending to be. When the door shut, Carter sank into his chair, pressing his fingers to his temples. It wasn't just a suspicion anymore, it was real. And now he had to decide what to do next. Beneath her gentleness, her perfect affection, and the soft cadence of her voice, Vanessa had been watching him. Not lovingly, strategically. She wasn't working alone. From the hallway, Maya stepped forward, her voice barely above a murmur. "Uncle Carter?" He turned to her, the fire still burning low behind his eyes. "Can you help me reset the security system later?" He studied her face for a long beat, then nodded. "You already are." The house settled into that eerie kind of silence that only comes after a storm, long past midnight, when the walls seem to listen. Carter remained in the darkened office long after Vanessa had gone upstairs to shower. The faint scent of lavender clung to the air like residue, intentional, lingering, as if she wanted to leave a mark on every corner of his sanctuary. The wine she'd brought sat untouched on the kitchen counter. The salmon was cold. Neither he nor Maya had the appetite for any of it, not after what they'd uncovered, and not knowing what still lay buried. Maya, wrapped in a blanket like a tiny soldier, sat cross-legged beside the server cabinet. The pale glow from the secondary monitor danced on her round glasses as her fingers flew across the keyboard. Her focus was surgical. Carter watched, half in awe, half in shame. He hadn't expected this kind of brilliance from anyone, let alone a grieving child. At some point, Josephine entered silently, placing 2 steaming cups of chamomile tea beside them. She asked no questions. She didn't need to. The look she gave Carter as she closed the door behind her said everything. "I've known women like her before. Don't collapse. Push forward." Carter leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He'd been trained to detect anomalies, built entire systems to identify threats before they breached. His protocols were tighter than federal vaults. And still, Vanessa had gotten through. Not through code. Through trust. She'd exploited his home, used Maya, used him. He clenched his fists. "You understand what we're looking at?" Maya asked quietly. He rolled his chair over to her side. "Show me." "I mapped her cloud sync," Maya began. "Not her personal account, she's smarter than that, but the devices she planted were pinging a private server, offshore, masked through a Cayman shell corp." Carter felt his stomach drop as she flipped through the tabs. "This is the IP trail, and these," she said, clicking again, "are your prototype logs." He leaned in. There it was, his own system blueprint. Algorithm stress tests, beta versions of the Orionics code he'd spent years developing. Proprietary data. Internal data. This is my work," he murmured. "And this," she tapped the next tab, "is where it ends up. Donc Carter froze. The interface was unmistakable. The watermark in the corner confirmed it. Vanessa wasn't just freelancing. She was embedded, a corporate spy, working for Orionix's biggest rival. "What the hell?" he whispered. "I built firewalls to keep out foreign governments." "She got in," Maya said softly, "because you let her in. Not because she was smarter. Because you trusted her." He couldn't speak. The realization tightened around his chest like a vice. The breach hadn't been technical. It was emotional. It had come through the heart. "Is Miles involved?" he asked, his voice low, dreading the answer. Maya hesitated, then opened a video file. "It's grainy," she warned, "but it's enough." The footage played. A tilted angle from the living room, aimed near the bookshelf. He never remembered approving that camera. Vanessa entered first, carrying a thin silver case. Moments later, Miles stepped in behind her. His body language was tense, but familiar. Like he belonged. On the table, on screen, she opened the case, removed a USB drive, and passed it to him. They exchanged a few quiet words. Then they embraced, not like old friends. Like partners. Or like conspirators. Carter leaned back, his throat dry. "I need air," he muttered. He stepped out onto the back deck. The cold cut deeper than he expected. Stars pierced the dark sky like glass pins. The pool lights shimmered gently, oblivious. 6 months ago, he adopted Maya to give her safety, stability, a home. And somehow, she was the one protecting him. He heard the door slide open behind him. "Uncle Carter?" Maya's voice was small, nearly lost to the wind. "You should be asleep." She walked barefoot onto the deck, pulling her blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I can't." He knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on her back. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "You shouldn't have had to carry this alone." Her voice cracked. "I wanted to tell you sooner. But I didn't want you to think I was ruining things." He frowned. "Why would you think that?" "Because you were happy when she was here. You laughed, you smiled. I thought if I said something you'd think I was trying to take that away." Carter's eyes shut tight. The betrayal didn't hurt half as much as knowing a child had kept silent to protect his feelings. She'd chosen his happiness over her safety. "No one should ever ask you to do that," he said, pulling her into a hug. "Not even me." For a long moment they just stood there. Then, pressed against his shoulder, Maya asked, "So? What now?" He pulled back and looked her square in the eyes. "Now," he said, "we turn the tables." They stepped back into the office. colder but clearer. Carter opened a hidden drawer and pulled out a secure, unregistered phone. He dialed a number by memory. "Reed," he said when the call connected. "I need you." There was a pause on the line, then a gruff voice answered. "Tell me when and where." "Tonight. Here. Quiet surveillance, no uniforms." "Got it." He hung up. Maya tilted her head. "Who's Reed?" "Old friend," Carter said. "Private security. He's handled corporate sabotage before." His voice had shifted, lower, composed, dangerous. "We're going to give Vanessa and Miles exactly what they think they want. We'll let them take it, but we'll control what they take." Maya's eyes lit up. "You mean false data?" He nodded. "Exactly." And while they celebrated, he would record every move. Carter loaded a decoy prototype structure. Maya augmented it with corrupted logs, deceptive algorithms, and dormant trapware. Every file they accessed would silently track their devices, broadcasting back to Carter's system. Josephine returned with cocoa and a tin of oat crackers. She placed them beside the monitors, her expression unreadable. "You two look like you're planning a war," she said softly. Carter didn't flinch. "We are." Just poured the cocoa, handed Mia a cookie, and said, "All right then, I'll need some sugar." It was nearly dawn when Carter finished assembling the decoy server. His hands moved on instinct, mind sharper than it had been in weeks. Maya had long since fallen asleep in the armchair beside him, the tablet still glowing softly on her chest. A blanket was draped over her small frame, rising and falling with each gentle breath. He watched her for a long moment. This wasn't just about corporate espionage anymore. It wasn't about data or betrayal or even Vanessa. This was about protection. About honoring the one person who had guarded his blind side without being asked, and about ensuring that those who turned his home into a battlefield would never get that chance again. He flicked off the light, letting the soft shadows reclaim the hallway above. Vanessa was still asleep in their bed, unaware that the quiet hum of his server had just changed everything. Knowing the incessant buzz of the server, "I didn't know I still had any fight left in me," he whispered to the dark. "But it's coming." Outside, the sun was rising slowly behind a veil of winter clouds, casting the estate in muted shades of gray. The morning looked ordinary, familiar even. But it wasn't. Vanessa strolled into the kitchen in Carter's navy robe, humming like nothing had cracked the foundation of her illusion the night before. She poured her usual coffee, added almond milk, always stocked, always controlled, and sat gracefully at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone like a picture-perfect fiancée starting her day. But Carter saw it now. Every movement rehearsed, every pause calculated, even the way she positioned herself, right in the line of one of the hidden cameras Maya had flagged. It wasn't casual, it was choreography. He entered quietly, wearing jeans and a charcoal sweater. His face betrayed nothing. "Morning, love," Vanessa chimed, her smile perfectly placed but hollow behind the eyes. "Finally got a good night's sleep," he replied, pulling open the fridge. "You seemed tense last night." She sipped her coffee. "Just worried about the company. Everything all right?" "Figuring things out," he said coolly, "but I think I've found the fix." Her smile sharpened by half a degree. She leaned in for a kiss, but Carter turned slightly, offering only his cheek. She hesitated, then laughed it off. "Grumpy morning, man," she teased. He checked his watch, heading into the city, meetings. "Want company?" she asked. "Not today." Something flickered in her eyes, disappointment or recalibration. "Sure," she nodded too quickly. "Might bake something with Mia later." "She's staying in," Carter replied, "working on a school project." Vanessa nodded again, just a little too eager. "Right. Of course." He smiled and left, but didn't go far. From the garage, he circled around the guest house in the back where Reed and his two-man tactical team had spent the night transforming it into a mobile command unit. Cables snaked across hardwood floors, connecting thermal monitors, audio blockers, and surveillance logs. It wasn't pretty, but it was airtight. Reed, towering and silver-haired, a man who looked more like a retired linebacker than a cybersecurity operative, nodded as Carter entered. "She's up," he said. "Her phone pinged the offshore note at 6:12 this morning." "She's already sending data?" Carter asked. "Not just that. She's monitoring your movements, feeding the illusion that you're still unaware." "And Miles?" Reed flipped to another screen. "Booked a one-way to D.C., no return, no baggage, no explanation. He's burning the trail." Carter's jaw clenched. "Then it ends today." Reed looked him over. "You ready?" "Oh, I don't need to be ready," Carter replied. "I just need to finish this." On a second screen, Maya's figure was visible, hoodie pulled tight, tapping on her tablet with the intensity of someone twice her age. She was focused, unshakable. In the main house, Vanessa paced the hallway, murmuring into her phone. "I'm telling you, he's acting different," she whispered. "Be ready." A pause. "No. Nothing yet. I need more time. He's still finishing the neural architecture. Once I have the framework, we extract." Another pause. "I'll handle it. He still trusts me." She ended the call and turned around. Maya stood there, silent. Vanessa flinched, then smiled with sugary warmth. "Hey, sweetheart, didn't see you there." Maya's face was unreadable. "Uncle Carter said you should work in your room today." Vanessa crouched slightly. "That's smart. You're a smart girl." Maya didn't blink. "Will you still be here when he gets back?" The question landed like a slap. Vanessa straightened. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" Maya nodded and walked away without another word. In the trailer, Carter and Reed watched the entire exchange. "She's tougher than half my team," Reed muttered. "She's been through more than most adults I know," Carter said. "And she's still here." By mid-afternoon, Carter returned to the main house with the excuse of forgetting his laptop. Vanessa greeted him with arms open, but he brushed past her, straight into the living room. He opened his laptop, logged in like it was any other workday. But every move, every keystroke, every call was a carefully laid piece of the trap. At 4:02 p.m., he uploaded a fake file to his desktop, a dummy prototype titled NMAI, Final Neural Sync. He left it open, obvious, as he stepped out to make a call. Vanessa, curled on the couch with her book, didn't even wait. The moment he was gone, she moved. In the kitchen, Vanessa stood alone. She pulled out her phone and held a sleek, flat device over the screen. Something Carter had never seen before. It looked almost like a credit card, but with military-grade polish. Within seconds it lit up, and files began transferring at lightning speed. Carter, listening through an earpiece from the adjacent room, heard Reed's voice crackle in. "She bit the bait. She's pushing everything to the Cayman shell," Carter whispered. "Got it." But that wasn't the real climax. 15 minutes later, the back entrance clicked open. Miles. He slipped in like a shadow, adjusting his collar and announcing he had a meeting with Carter. Vanessa flinched. Not enough for an ordinary observer to notice, but enough to betray panic. She hadn't expected him so soon. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "We need to speed things up," Miles replied, low and firm. "He's getting suspicious." "You said tomorrow." "I don't care. I want it done tonight." Down the hallway, Maya sat quietly behind a half-open cabinet door, her tablet recording every whispered word. Carter waited. 2 minutes passed, then he stepped into the room. Miles and Vanessa turned sharply. Their smiles were seconds too slow, too strained. "I didn't know you had guests," Carter said. Miles cleared his throat. "Just stopped by. Thought we could catch up." "I thought you were flying to D.C. tomorrow," Carter added, pouring himself a drink with infuriating calm. Miles blinked. "Who told you that?" Carter didn't answer. He simply raised his glass. "To catching up." Vanessa laughed too brightly. "Actually, Miles was just leaving." "No," Carter said, his tone like cold steel. "He can stay." He pointed to the couch. Something in his voice pinned them down like weights. They obeyed. Moments later, Reed entered, flanked by 2 men in plain clothes, both armed. Vanessa shot to her feet. "What is this?" Carter gestured for her to sit. "Just a conversation," he said. "One that's been long overdue." He turned toward the wall and pressed a button. The massive living room screen blinked to life. Footage played, Vanessa transferring files, Miles receiving the drive. Her hushed call, their embrace. Vanessa's expression emptied. Miles stiffened like a wire under pressure. "Are you spying on me?" she asked, trembling. "No," Carter said. "You were spying on me. I just found you first." The silence cut deep. Vanessa's voice broke. "You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to be real. I wasn't supposed to fall for you." "Loved you?" Carter asked, his voice a whisper. "Maybe, I think so." "But you chose," he said. "You had choices. I gave you trust, you gave me betrayal, you slept in my bed, lied to a child." He turned to Miles, eyes blazing. "And you, after everything I did for you?" Miles rose slowly. "Carter, don't make this dramatic. It's not what you think." "No," Carter's voice cracked sharp. "Because this is treason." Reed stepped forward. Miranda rights were read. Vanessa and Miles were handcuffed without struggle. As they were led away, Maya stepped quietly into the room. Her eyes searched Carter's. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, crouching beside her. She nodded. "Are you—" He pulled her close. "I am now." And when the front door shut behind the traitors, it wasn't triumph Carter felt. It was gravity. The kind that settles in your bones when you realize trust is far harder to rebuild than a system breach. The next morning, the mansion sat in unnatural stillness. Not peaceful, just too quiet, like a vacuum left behind after a storm. Carter sat on the edge of his bed, still wearing the clothes from the night before. He didn't touch his phone, didn't open his laptop. The betrayal hadn't just threatened his career. It had almost taken everything. A soft knock on the door pulled him back. "Come in," he said, voice hoarse. Maya entered, wearing an oversized hoodie and fuzzy socks, holding a mug in both hands. "I brought you coffee," she said shyly. "I didn't know exactly how you like it, so I made it how you did for me last week." He took the mug. Their fingers touched. "Thank you, sweetheart." She sat at the foot of the bed, swinging her legs gently. "Is it over now?" He took a sip. It was a little sweet, a little strong, just like her. "If only I could say yes," he replied. "Taking them down wasn't the end. I still have to clean up the wreckage." "Will they go to jail?" she asked. "Most likely," he said, "but they won't be alone." Reed had uncovered more names overnight. Layers of deception ran deeper than either of them imagined. Maya looked down. "Do you still trust anyone?" Carter didn't hesitate. "I trust you." Her lips curled into a small smile. Downstairs, Reed had transformed the office. The mobile unit was gone, replaced by a fully isolated server, cut off from any external line. Reed nodded as Carter entered. "I've been up since 4, he grunted. 3 forensic analysts are tearing through the data." "And?" Carter asked. "Miles was just the beginning. We've flagged 3 board members, 1 VP from R&D, even a guy in accounting." Carter stared at the wall. "How did this happen?" he whispered. "How does this happen right under your nose?" Carter muttered, jaw clenched. "Because you trust them," Reed said, sorting through a pile of encrypted drives. "You trust them to do their job, and because they don't strike until they know exactly how to—" "She knows everything about my life," Carter whispered, almost to himself. "Every detail." "That's what makes her dangerous," Reed replied. "They don't just watch you, they study you. They map your routines, your moods, even your emotional triggers. Hell, they probably knew your favorite jazz record before you ever shook her hand." Carter's voice dropped. "They played the long game." "They did," Reed said with a grim nod. "But they lost." Later that day, Carter took Maya to an old midtown cafe. It was a quiet retreat with cracked vinyl booths and mismatched mugs, the kind of place where time stood still, a piece of his past untouched by betrayal. The moment they walked in, Bernice, a waitress in her 60s, gasped with delight. "Well, if it isn't Mr. Williams!" she exclaimed, nearly dropping her order pad. "How many years has it been?" "Too many," Carter said with a real smile for the first time in days. "This is Maya." Maya offered her hand politely. "Nice to meet you." Bernice grinned. "Oh, she's got manners. I like her already." They ordered pancakes and eggs. As syrup swirled into Maya's milk, Carter leaned in. "Why didn't you tell me about the camera the moment you spotted it?" Maya stirred in silence. "I didn't want to sound paranoid. At first I thought maybe it was for security, but then I noticed how Vanessa always stood in the same spots, like she was putting on a show. I couldn't explain it. I just felt it was wrong, like hearing a wrong note in a song even if you don't know how to play." Carter nodded slowly. "That instinct? Never ignore it." That afternoon, back at the estate, Reed called Carter into the library. The room was lined with documents, maps, call logs, photos, printed emails. Reed stood next to the spread, grave. "We need to talk about New York," he said. "What happened?" "We followed the money," Reed replied. "One of your subsidiaries, GlassTech Labs, has been moving data through a front company in Brooklyn. Guess who signed the merger paperwork last spring?" Carter didn't need to ask. "Vanessa." Right before she started pushing the East Coast expansion, right before he proposed. The betrayal was deeper than he thought. "What do? We go straight to the source. No press, no noise. We fly tonight." Carter glanced down the hallway, where Maya's laughter floated from the sunroom. "She comes with us." "To New York?" Reed raised an eyebrow. "She's in the middle of this, and I trust her. I'm not letting her out of my sight." They flew out that evening on Carter's private jet. Maya curled beside him, headphones on, quietly watching shadows flicker across the window pane. Carter glanced at her often, the faint blue light of her screen reflecting on her face. She didn't know it yet, but in 1 week she had realigned his entire world. They checked into a discreet boutique hotel near Soho. No suits, no headlines. No one recognized him. It was exactly what they needed. The next morning, Carter and Reed arrived at a warehouse along the East River. Sandwiched between an import business and a nameless storage depot, the building looked unremarkable from the outside, but inside the truth buzzed in red and green server lights. "This isn't just file theft," Reed muttered. "They're mirroring your system, building a ghost version of your entire network." Carter's stomach dropped. Not stealing, replacing. Just then, a clean-cut man in a tailored suit stepped forward. "Mr. Williams," he said, calm and smug. "Didn't expect you so early." Carter turned. "Who are you?" "Eric Vaughn," the man said. "Interim director, or I was." Carter's voice dropped cold. "Let's drop the act. We've traced the payments, the offshore accounts. This isn't some side project. This is a hostile takeover." Eric's smirk began to falter. "You're bluffing." Reed stepped forward and dropped a thick folder onto the desk. Vanessa Lane's signed confession. 2 terabytes of mirrored server data. Enough to bring down this entire operation. Eric's eyes flicked from the folder to Carter. "You're bluffing," he repeated. Carter stepped closer. "I didn't build a billion-dollar company without learning how to defend it. You didn't just lose my trust. You tried to erase me. Now watch your empire collapse." As they left the building, unmarked federal SUVs pulled in. Agents stormed the entrance. Eric Vaughn was escorted out in cuffs, face pale. Across the street, Maya stood next to a street vendor, quietly munching on a cookie. "Is that one of the bad guys?" she asked as Carter approached. "Yes," Carter said, "one of the last." "Good," she said, brushing off her hands. "Now let's go home." The word felt heavier now. Not a place. A person. Back at the estate, Carter stood quietly before the upright piano in the corner of his study. His fingers hovered over the keys but didn't press down. He hadn't played since the accident, since he lost his brother and Mia lost her parents. But now, with the noise finally quiet, the memory called to him like a melody long forgotten. He pressed a single note. The sound was soft, low, clean. Footsteps padded in behind him, light, hesitant. "Uncle Carter?" Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. He turned halfway. "Hey, sweetheart, can't sleep?" She shook her head, toes hidden in her socks as she sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor. "I keep thinking about Vanessa, and Miles, and the man in New York. I know they're gone, but it still feels like they left something behind." He looked at her, at the way she pushed up her sleeves, staring at the floor. "What does it feel like?" he asked gently. The house still felt like it was watching. Even with the painting removed, even with the spies exposed, there was a sense that the walls remembered. Carter gently closed the piano lid and took Maya's hand. "It's not nothing," he said softly. "It's your instinct, and I believe in it." Maya nodded but didn't smile. There was still weight in her little shoulders, the kind children shouldn't carry. He lifted her onto the bench beside him. "How about a lullaby?" Her brows furrowed. "Do you even remember one?" He chuckled quietly, resting his fingers on the keys. "There's one my father used to hum to me when I couldn't sleep. Let's see if the memory still works." As the soft melody drifted into the room, Maya leaned her head against his arm. Her eyes closed, and for a fleeting moment the mansion wasn't haunted by betrayal. It glowed with healing. The next morning brought sunlight through the tall oaks, but Reed arrived early, more rigid than usual. "We've got another problem," he said, handing Carter a document as they stood on the back porch. "Of course we do," Carter muttered, sipping coffee. "What now?" "Two board members are calling for a vote of no confidence. They're using the Vanessa scandal to argue you've become emotionally compromised." Carter's jaw clenched. "They want me out of my own company?" "Worse," Reed replied. "They want to split the company, slice it up and sell it in pieces. Easier to manage, harder to trace liabilities." "Who's leading it?" "Elliot Green and Tabitha Claymore. Old money, no loyalty. Vanessa gave them an excuse to move." Carter paced along the porch, eyes fixed on the mist curling above the lawn. "If they think I'll go quietly, they've misread me." Reed opened his laptop. "I dug into their records. Claymore has indirect ties to a hedge fund that helped set up Vanessa's shell company in Brooklyn. She's not just worried about fallout. She's involved." Carter leaned in. "Them to all the employees. Then we expose her." "Not yet," Reed warned. "We don't have enough for court." "I don't need court," Carter said. "I need the truth. Clear and undeniable." Later that day, Maya helped rearrange photos in the hallway. She held a frame of her parents, smiling, carefree, at Lake Lanier 2 summers ago. Her mom's curls shimmered in the sun, her dad's arm wrapped proudly around her. Carter stopped as he walked past. "That was a good day." Maya nodded. "They said I swam like a fish, but I hated lake water." He smiled, and together they hung the frame near the center, surrounded by black and white photographs of Carter's own parents and uncles. Then, without warning, she asked, "Why do people do bad things, Uncle Carter, even when they already have everything?" Carter sank to the floor beside her. "Because what you have on the outside doesn't fill what's missing inside. Some people try to pour more in, thinking it'll fix the emptiness, but it never does." Maya ran her finger along the wooden frame. "I never want to be like that." He wrapped his arm around her. "You won't be. You've got the heart and the truth." That night, the emergency board meeting commenced in a high-rise conference room overlooking downtown Atlanta. Glass walls, cold suits, hot politics. Elliot Green cleared his throat. "Carter, let's be honest. The company has taken a hit. Investors are anxious. We need a stable leader, not someone tangled in a scandal." Carter's expression was unreadable. "You're saying I should step down because I refuse to ignore a criminal operation under my own roof?" Tabitha leaned forward, voice sugar-coated. "It's not about guilt. It's about perception. Perception defines value." Carter tapped his pen slowly. Do you think it's a coincidence that this same woman who sabotaged my company was also advocating for internal policies that benefit both of you financially? Elliot stiffened. Be careful, Carter. I'm done being careful, he said flatly. You called this meeting under emergency protocol, then let's treat it like one. I move for a full public audit. Every board member's financial activity for the last 2 years, including offshore transactions. Tabisa narrowed her eyes. You wouldn't dare. Oh, I already did. He nodded toward the door. Reed walked in, a thick file tucked under one arm. Forensic accountant, Carter said. Let's take a look. The silence that followed was thunderous. Papers rustled, throats cleared, but no one moved. If you're not willing to be transparent, Carter said, there's the door. No one stood. He nodded. Thought so. That night, Carter sat alone by the fire in the living room. He should have felt victorious. But he didn't. Not really. He felt worn, hollow, as if part of him had cracked and hadn't fully healed. Maya appeared, wrapped in a blanket, and slid next to him. Did you win? She asked. He nodded. We stopped them. Then why do you look so sad? He paused. Because it should never have gotten this far. I thought I could outsmart betrayal, but some people, especially the ones closest to you, they don't want to be saved. They just want to win. She rested her head against his arm. I still have you. He smiled faintly. That's the only victory I care about. The fire crackled gently. The piano keys from the night before echoed faintly in memory. The wound wasn't healed, but it had started to close. The next morning, the estate seemed lighter, as if something dark had finally been exhaled. But Carter knew better. Relief was not the same as safety. Betrayal doesn't die, it hides, it waits, and sometimes it returns stronger. Vanessa was still out there, and she knew he knew. Downstairs, Maya stood in the sunlit kitchen toasting bread. She wore one of his old t-shirts, its hem hanging past her knees, her curls messy from sleep. You look tired, she said, not turning around. Carter poured his coffee. Didn't sleep much. Too much thinking, she said, handing him toast. That's how you get wrinkles. He chuckled. You mean the ones that make me look mysterious and wise? I mean the ones that make you look stressed and old, she said, grinning. He rubbed her head playfully. You're cruel in the morning. No, she said, hopping onto his stool. Just honest. Then her voice quieted. Are you going after her? He didn't need to ask who. Yes, he said. But not the way I once thought. I don't want revenge. I want proof. I want closure. Maya nodded thoughtfully. Need help? He raised an eyebrow. Are you volunteering? She nodded. I was thinking about that camera near your office, the one in the closet. He turned sharply. What about it? I heard something once. A click. I thought it was nothing. But what if someone's using it? Changing batteries, downloading footage? His face changed. You think the closet might be an access point? I think it's more than that. 10 minutes later, they stood together outside the closet door. And whatever came next, they were ready. Together, Carter asked Reed to meet him back at the estate, with one specific request. Bring Owen Young. Owen wasn't flashy. He didn't talk much. But he was fast, brilliant, and above all, loyal. The kind of man who knew exactly what to look for and exactly what to keep to himself. Armed with a search wand, Owen swept the study in silence. The device chirped faintly near the decorative molding above the doorframe. There, he said. Infrared transmission is broken, but this is a hub, a collection point. He climbed a short ladder, peeled back the cladding, and revealed a tiny black signal amplifier. Tucked so deep behind the insulation it would have taken a miracle to find without precision tools. Carter took it gently, turned it over. No logo, no barcode, nothing traceable. The signal jumped every 3 seconds, encrypted, quiet, and not using Wi-Fi. This is military-grade radio frequency, Owen said. Tom said, Carter's jaw tensed. Vanessa didn't just want to monitor us, she wanted it to be untraceable. Reed folded his arms. Which means she's not working alone. This isn't a private investigator setup, this is covert ops. Carter gave a slow nod. Call Leon. Reed blinked. Leon? I know we haven't spoken in years, Carter said, eyes narrowing. But he's the only one who's done what we're about to do. An hour later, Leon Barksdale stepped through the front door. Bald, broad-shouldered, with a bullet scar visible near his collarbone, Leon looked like he had never truly retired. It's been a while, he said, clasping Carter's hand. Not long enough, Carter replied, but I need your help. Leon smirked. You once told me you were done helping anyone. I lied, Carter said plainly. They're coming after my family. Leon's smile faded. Tell me everything. They sat down in Carter's study, the recovered signal amplifier on the desk, Owen quietly walking Leon through the technical setup. Leon listened, didn't speak, and then stood. She's trained, he said. Former military intelligence, or mercenary, possibly both. She's not after your fortune, he continued. She's after your IP, patents, proprietary code, something you haven't shared publicly. Carter nodded grimly. She asked me about Project Heon 2 weeks ago. I brushed it off. Leon's head snapped up. You never filed Hans Core AI, did you? No, Carter replied. It's locked in the offline server. Only Reed and I have access. Leon exhaled. Then she's not spying, she's preparing to steal, or worse. Reed stepped closer. So, what do we do? Leon didn't miss a beat. We bait the trap. That night, Carter invited Vanessa back to the estate. She hadn't expected that. He saw it in the slight rigidity of her shoulders, the way she overdressed in a silk navy dress and heels that whispered control. I thought you needed space, she said cautiously. I did, Carter replied with practiced calm. I've had time to think. About us, about everything. He poured her wine, his tone casual. But behind his eyes, the plan was in motion. Maya was safe next door, every room, every hallway monitored. Leon's team had installed surveillance with surgical precision. By the fire, they talked. Nothing meaningful. Art, travel, the weather in New York. She softened, eased into the persona she had always worn so well. The smile, the touch, the charm. He let her. Then, quietly, he leaned in. Have you ever wondered what trust sounds like? She blinked. What? He smiled, just slightly. It sounds like silence, the kind that happens when people stop pretending. Her hand froze. You know, he continued, voice softer now. I always wondered why you never asked about Project Heon again. Then I realized you didn't need to. Vanessa's eyes flared. You think you're clever, she said coldly. Carter's smile vanished. And you are. But you forgot one thing. You can't manipulate someone who remembers who they are. A voice echoed from the corridor. Leon. That's enough. 4 men entered, one holding a recording device. We tracked her signal, Leon said. The moment Heon was mentioned, she triggered a silent transmitter. Vanessa spun around. You spied on me? No, Carter said flatly. You spied on yourself. I just watched. Her expression darkened. You'll never prove this in court. I don't need to, Carter said. You won't make it to a courtroom, and neither will the people behind you. She stepped forward. You don't know what you're up against. Oh, I do, Carter replied calmly. You stirred a man with nothing left to lose. And a little girl more valuable than anything you could ever offer. Leon approached with the cuffs. We're not law enforcement, Vanessa. But we're very thorough, and we don't forget betrayal. She said nothing more as they led her out. That night, Carter sat on the porch, listening to the cicadas hum beneath the weight of memory. The house was quiet. Still, the screen door creaked open. Maya pattered out in her socks. She's gone? She asked. Forever, he said. I hope. She sat beside him, hugging her knees to her chest. I'm proud of you, she said. I didn't do it alone. She looked up, serious. We're a good team, Uncle Carter. We are, he said, and starting tomorrow, we rebuild. No lies, no cameras, just truth. She leaned into his side, resting her head gently. And for the first time in weeks, Carter looked up at the stars and didn't feel watched. 2 days later, Carter Williams stood alone in the heart of his company headquarters, 35 floors above Manhattan. The city buzzed below, alive with sirens, cab lights, and a million people unaware of how close they came to losing something invisible but vital. He sipped his coffee and turned as the meeting room behind him filled with low conversation. Reed entered first, holding 2 sealed files. Then came Ellen, the firm's chief executive, and finally Marcus Trant, chair of the board. The board. One by one the directors filed into the conference room. Their footsteps were quiet, their glances sharp. They'd heard the whispers. About Carter's fiancée, about hidden cameras, about betrayal. But no one knew the full truth. Until now. Carter stood at the head of the room. Let's begin. The chatter died instantly. All eyes turned to him. I called this emergency meeting, he began, voice calm but cutting, because what almost happened to this company is not the result of sabotage alone. It's the result of something more subtle and far more dangerous, neglecting trust. He let the words hang in the air. For months, core infrastructure, code frameworks, architectural data was being leaked. Quietly, consistently. We missed it because it wasn't financial, but it was critical. It wasn't loud, but it was lethal. He paced slowly, deliberate, as the directors sat frozen. The breach came from inside. And it wasn't an intern. It wasn't a temp. It was someone with full access. Someone I trusted. Murmurs stirred, furrowed brows, unspoken tension. Reed stepped forward and handed Carter a folder. Carter opened it and laid the evidence bare. Time-stamped signal logs, restored transmission routes, and internal reports confirming the infiltration. Then he let the silence speak for him. Finally, he continued. Vanessa was part of a multinational spy operation targeting our proprietary algorithms. Their plan wasn't just to steal it. It was to release our own work under a rival name and accuse us of plagiarism. A director gasped. Think would have killed our IPO, Ellen whispered. They nearly did, Carter said, but we stopped them in time. Reed distributed sanitized summaries. No names, just technical breakdowns of the breach and how it was blocked. As the board members read, their shock shifted to awe. We neutralized the threat, Carter said, but this isn't about her. It's about how easily someone can walk through our gates when we mistake access for loyalty. He looked each of them in the eye. Starting today, every senior executive, myself included, will undergo a full security audit, all financials, digital footprints, and media connections, and I'm appointing a new counterintelligence advisor. Ellen raised her hand. Who? Carter smiled faintly. Leon Barksdale. A hush fell across the room. Then Reed nodded in approval. Carter sat down. This isn't about paranoia, he said. It's about clarity. We no longer live in the world we grew up in. Trust is now currency, and we've just been robbed. Later that day, Carter stepped into a small cafe in Brooklyn. Nothing fancy, but the coffee was strong and jazz played softly through the speakers. The owner, a retired Navy vet named Hank Ways, nodded to him from behind the bar. Carter spotted Maya at a corner booth. 2 mugs of cocoa, a sketchbook spread open. You're late, she grinned. You're dramatic, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. Big difference. She sipped her cocoa. Did they believe you? They didn't have a choice, Carter replied. I gave them the truth. She nodded thoughtfully, then tapped her pencil to the paper again. You should start something. I already did, he said. It's called a tech company. No, she replied. I mean something that matters, like a scholarship fund for kids like me. Kids who lost a parent but still have something worth building. Carter blinked. It hit deeper than he expected. That's oddly specific. So are you, she said, looking him dead in the eyes. He leaned over and turned the sketchbook around. The page showed a stylized logo, a winged W cradling a small figure holding a book. Maya Initiative, she said. It'll help kids remember the ones who didn't get a second chance. He swallowed hard, surprised by the lump rising in his throat. You came up with this by yourself? She shrugged. You always say pain demands rent, so charge it forward. Without a word, Carter reached into his jacket, pulled out his checkbook and began writing. I'm funding it. First million, done. Maya's eyes widened. $1 million? You're my partner now, remember? Her smile lit up the entire booth. That night, Carter stood outside her bedroom door. The light was still on. He watched her for a moment, sprawled on her stomach, sketching, humming to herself. She looked safe, peaceful. He returned to his office. No cameras, no secrets. His silence and the space to breathe. He opened a drawer and pulled out a small digital recorder, pressed record. My name is Carter Williams, he said, and tonight I want to remember this feeling. Not fear, not betrayal, but this exact moment. When I realized I still have something worth protecting. He paused, voice steady. Vanessa was never just a spy. She was the embodiment of what happens when love turns blind, when we stop asking questions, when instinct is silenced in the name of comfort. Carter understood now. He wouldn't let it happen again. He shut off the monitoring feed. Just then his phone buzzed. A message from Leon. He's traced the signal trail. She's not alone. Someone inside Heian is working with her. Carter leaned back in his chair. It wasn't over. Maybe it never would be. But he had a plan, a team, a mission, and for now, that was enough. The next morning, Carter walked into Heian's main office with Maya at his side. She wore a fitted jacket over her favorite hoodie, holding a slim file under her arm. A proposal. Her proposal. The receptionist smiled. Good morning, Mr. Williams. Carter nodded, then looked at Maya. Today, he said, she gets her own desk. Maya blinked. For real? He grinned. Let's just say the company's under new management. His footsteps echoed down the cybersecurity floor, a place few executives dared venture unless disaster had already struck. Today wasn't about damage control. Today was about building the future before someone else tried to burn it down. At the end of the corridor stood Leon Barksdale, arms folded, steel-eyed as ever. Behind him, a new server vault stood sealed, 3 layers of biometric security, a facial scan lock, and an encryption matrix so tight the NSA would flinch. Maya had called it the safe. The name stuck. You ready? Leon asked, skipping greetings. As ready as anyone about to open the devil's inbox, Carter replied. Leon gestured toward the vault. We decrypted her outbound data. Vanessa wasn't just working for another firm. She was constructing a network inside Heian. Employees, vendors, even one of your assistant project managers. Carter's jaw tensed. She wasn't after me. She wanted the entire platform. Leon nodded. And here's the real punch. She wasn't the top. She was middle tier. Then who's pulling the strings? We don't know his name, Leon said quietly. He's never shown his face. In her messages, he's only referred to as Monarch. Carter exhaled, shoulders tight. So the mastermind's still in the wind. For now, Leon said. But we're baiting the line. That evening, Carter returned to his office to find Maya at her new desk. Her coat was oversized, her sneakers clashed with the polished marble, but no one questioned her. Not anymore. She'd spotted the first signal, she heard the whisper when no one else did, and now they looked at her differently, like she belonged here. She looked up from her sketch pad. They gave me an ID badge and a mug, she said. It says, youngest advisor in the world. Carter laughed. You earned it. She smiled and handed him a sealed envelope. Leon dropped this off, said it looked old. Carter's fingers paused when he saw the wax stamp, a monarch butterfly. His heart skipped. He closed the office door behind him. The paper inside was elegant, heavy linen, handwritten in sharp, refined cursive. "Hello, Carter. You are a visionary. But even visionaries can be blind. Vanessa was never meant to harm you. She was sent only to extract. Her failure was emotional. I don't repeat emotional failures. This can still end professionally. Meet me tomorrow, 11 a.m., Battery Park. No security, no girl. No signature, just a tiny sketch in the corner. A butterfly, wings closed." At 10:58 the next morning, Carter sat on a weathered bench in Battery Park. The Hudson River shimmered in the pale sun. Seagulls cried overhead. Joggers passed. No security details. No Maya, just Carter. And the silence before an answer. He just made the call without her. Now he was alone. Carter was in the woods. Parta would be traded. At 11:01 the man appeared. Gray-haired, tall, dressed simply but expensively. He carried no briefcase. His hands were empty. He sat beside Carter, saying nothing for a full minute. "You were always too idealistic," Carter said at last. "That was my weakness." "No," the man replied with a cool smile. "Mine was falling for Vanessa. Yours was raising a girl who believes truth is more valuable than survival." Carter stiffened. "You know, Maya." "I know everything," the man said calmly. "I helped build this industry when you were still spelling algorithm phonetically. I created trust just to learn how to dismantle it. Then why destroy Hion?" "Because it's clean," the man said. "You still believe in open source code, ethics, privacy. That's bad business, and it makes people like you vulnerable. To why meet now? Because I'm offering you an exit. Walk away, sell quietly, no FBI, no headlines. Maya grows up safe. You retire. The butterfly vanishes." He smiled again. "It's the only offer you'll get." Carter stared out at the river. He thought of Vanessa's false kisses, of Maya's voice in his office, small, shaking but determined, of the quiet moment on the porch when she said, "I'm proud of you." He stood. The man didn't move. "Think it over." Carter turned to him, voice even. "You picked the wrong family." Carter's voice was low, final, and with that he walked away, straight into the storm he intended to end. Back at Hion's headquarters, Carter convened his senior leadership team for a midnight war room session. Only 6 people were present. Maya sat curled in a corner, notebook in hand, her brows furrowed, scribbling furiously. "We're about to be breached," Carter announced. The room tensed. Ellen leaned in. "Press leak." "No," Carter said, flipping his tablet. "A digital one. Someone funneled code fragments, specifically our predictive AI prototype, to Monarch Shell Corporation. We're going to give them what they want. Or what they think they want." He turned the screen toward them. A polished interface shimmered, a fake prototype locked with a tracer script. "As soon as they open it, we'll get a signal trace, a direct path." Leon grinned. "Reverse bait." "Exactly," Carter said. "And once we find them?" He looked Leon in the eye. "We burn the network, all of it." Later that night, Carter found himself beside his mother's bed. She slept quietly, curled into a ball, her frail hand wrapped around an old teddy bear. Light from the hallway cast long shadows across the room. He watched her for a long moment, haunted by the words that man in the park had said. "He believes the truth matters more than survival." Carter bent down and kissed her forehead. "She's right," he whispered. "And that's why they'll lose." He left the door slightly ajar, not for ventilation, but for the night itself, to let it know the house was no longer afraid. As dawn broke, Carter stood alone on the roof of Hion's central tower. The skyline of Atlanta stretched behind him, awash in morning light. A tablet glowed in his hand. The bait was live, the trace running. It was disguised as a game-changing innovation in predictive learning. but hidden beneath the surface was a digital trap, encrypted with a signature that only revealed itself when someone tried to decrypt it. Down in the war room, tension throbbed like electricity. Leon gave quiet commands as the display updated in real time, network pings, IP relays, a glowing web of activity. In the corner, Maya sat with legs tucked under her, laptop open, eyes locked on the screen. She had helped design the front-end package. Her interface made the bait irresistible. It wasn't just brilliant. It was poetic. She called it the butterfly sting. Suddenly, one of the nodes on the map blinked red. "They bit," Leon said, voice flat. The room went silent. Then it erupted. Carter returned just as the trace finalized. "It didn't come from a front company," Leon said, eyes scanning lines of data. "It originated from Beixler Capital, Midtown Manhattan. They're an investment firm, not a dev lab." "Unless," Carter said, narrowing his eyes, "they're laundering data through financial assets." Leon pointed again. "We tracked the server link. The endpoint is firewalled inside Beixler's internal network. Whoever Monarch is, they're hiding inside a bank." Carter's voice dropped. "Then we go analog." The next morning, Carter stood before the entrance to Beixler Capital's 57-story glass fortress. No bodyguards, no press, just a black jacket, a steel gaze, and a thin document folder tucked under one arm. He walked past security like he owned the pavement beneath him. The receptionist tried to speak, paused, and fell silent. His presence alone spoke louder than any confrontation. He entered a private elevator using a single black keycard granted by a deeply embedded Heian insider with access to the financial networks. Floor 47. Private access. The doors opened into silence. Gray carpeting, abstract art, mahogany walls. The smell of steel and wealth. Then, movement. A woman in a tailored gray suit appeared, eyes as cold as slate. Behind her, a man Carter recognized. Battery Park, gray hair, mocking smirk. "Mr. William," the man said, voice smooth and amused. "Still allergic to subtlety, I see." Carter didn't speak. He handed the dossier to the woman. Inside was a complete chain of evidence, full digital footprints, timestamps, embedded signatures, and most damning of all, a copy of the NDA Beixler had violated through their shell firms. Proof. Undeniable, surgical, devastating. And the war was no longer digital. It was personal. "I'm here to offer one last courtesy," Carter said, standing tall, voice firm. "Dismantle your network, delete every trace, or I'll take this to the feds, 3 media outlets, and the SEC before midnight." The man across from him barely glanced at the file Carter held. "You're bluffing," he said with a smirk. Carter placed a second copy on the glass table between them. "I think it's already with my attorney." A pause. The man's smile faded.